Hello everyone, I'm Ozzy from Ozzy Mars, and with me is my drummer Dolf.
How's it, everyone?
And we have our very special guest tonight, Willem Moller. Hello Willem.
How's it, guys? Nice to hear your voices again. I can see you. You can't, yes, you can't see me, which is probably just as well.
We can see your name beautifully spelled out
We've
in the
got
middle
that,
of the screen.
I have to do, I don't bother with the makeup in here.
Now Willem has his roots very deep in South African music history, and it's a great honor to speak to you. I'd like to start. Obviously, you know where. I'd like to start off with the reason why I know the name Willem Moller is because the bassist in my first band, Isak van Zyl, was in bands with you when you guys were young and everything. And obviously, Isak passed away, and he was a very, very special guy. And he used to tell me about how you guys jammed. I remember one of his stories was when he started playing bass, he couldn't afford a bass guitar. And he used a normal 6-string guitar. I don't know if he down-tuned it or took some of the strings off or something, but yeah. So really, really cool stories from way back in the day. So if you can tell us about when that was and just share the experience with us.
Sure, guys. I met a guy when I was in standard 6 in high school. I just got into high school. I just turned 12, and I met this guy called Conrad Keener who could play piano and sing, and I could play a bit of drums. So almost immediately we formed a band, Septic Daisy, which we thought was brilliant.
Yeah, that's an amazing name. Yeah, sick.
Yeah, but anyway, we were just buggering about. And then I know standard 7, I think on the first day of school, there's a new guy in our class, Isak van Zyl, and he loves music too. So just a little background. In those days, things were very conservative, and there weren't many people who liked rock music, you know. So you seek each other out. You find the other guy is also a music fan. The guy is also carrying around the same albums, you know. Yeah. And so okay, Isak's a music fan, and yes, he can play a bit of guitar. Okay, you in the band, you know. So the other guy we know. All right, but then I think Isak sort of from the beginning wanted to play bass. He thought, no, he's going to be better at bass. So yeah, that was his first attempt was a down-tuned guitar. And then we got him a really cheap, crappy pawn shop bass, but in those days, all we could afford. It's kind of like, you know, Rit Muller at Casco.
Yeah, Rit Muller, Sanchez.
Absolute, yeah, rock bottom entry level. Anyway, he played that thing for years. He played it. You know, that's what we had, so we played it. And he actually sounded great on that thing. And so we had many names. We played throughout high school. We had bands. Embrace was one name. Mammoth was one. Mystery was one. And so we carried on. But Isak and I we grew up learning to play music together and listening to music. So we explored music together, new albums coming out, all the different stuff, and then we'd try and jam and learn stuff from each other. So we kind of, had a musical upbringing together, if you like.
Okay.
And Conrad as well, who was much more accomplished than us. He had musical training. He could really play piano well. He could sing. So he was ahead of us. And between the three of us, we started, tackling more. We started with really basic, songs that we could sort of Bad Moon Rising and Proud Mary and
okay, so also like starting with covers, learning to play music.
Yeah, no, of course, no idea. So it's Jumpin' Jack Flash, Locomotive Breath. It was like songs simple enough for us to get around. So that's how we started. We jammed them, and then we learn new things, and we'd meet people who maybe teach us a chord we don't know or whatever, And I was playing drums, playing along with records, and just learning beats and stuff. And then in the trick, there was another new guy in school. And the first day we heard about him, he owns a Fender.
Ooh.
Hey.
That's all we knew about him.
Awesome, yeah.
So I don't know how we got this word. I think we had a mutual friend from somewhere. Anyway, and so he was in the band. He had a Fender. So he's in the band. As it turned out, Nico is an absolutely mind-bogglingly talented guitar player who could play anything by ear. And he was way ahead of all of us. So suddenly we could tackle like prog music and stuff that we couldn't play before. We could play the Deep Purple stuff. Nico could play all the guitar solos. So it upped our game totally to have this guy around. You know, he could, you know. So that went on for a while. And then after school, we kind of went separate ways. But I must tell you about Isaac's dad as well, who also had a big influence on me. Like Isaac, he was a big guy and a flamboyant guy, if you like, you know, a big figure, character.
But he was also
larger than life.
He was quite well known, wasn't he?
Yeah. His dad was actually, again, a little context in that time in the 70s, unbelievable totalitarian apartheid regime in this country. Anything it didn't agree was censored, banned, outlawed. And there were certain Afrikaans writers in the 60s who started rebelling against this and writing books that clearly had another thing to say. And they were sort of labeled together as die Sestigers. They were like the rebels. And Isaac's dad was from that school. He wrote poetry. He worked as a translator, but he wrote poetry on the side. He had a few collections published. And he was friends with these guys and so on. So I was exposed to this. We'd go to Isaac's house and there'd be his dad and he'd show me this poetry and tell me about these writers. And he was also listening to all kinds of music from around the world. Huge music fan. So he had jazz and classical records. He had a beautiful sound system. I remember one year, Time magazine had a list of top 10 produced albums ever. You know, one of those things. Yeah. So he went to Musica and bought them all. And those days, you could buy the import. You could buy the import vinyl, which sounded good, or the crappy local pressing, which sounded shit, but was cheaper. He bought only the imports. So we could listen to this music, and you know, Dark Side of the Moon and Abbey Road and Talking Inner Visions, stuff like that. Sure. Amazing music on this beautiful sound system. It was a hell of an education for us. And also there was John Coltrane, you know, there was jazz, and we heard all this other stuff. So that was wonderful. So there was a big part of my you know, it was a very impressionable age, your teens, you know. It was, certainly for me, that's when I discovered music and really explored things. Sure. And Isaac and I were like mates through all of this. So there was a big thing. And after school, we kind of lost contact, but later we reconnected. But we had many adventures, many bands, many stories. I must tell you one story that kind of sums up Isaac for me when I think of him. I don't know how, but in Matric now we had this band and we played like a metal of prog and heavy rock, you know, of the day. Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and Yes, and whatever covers we could. You know, that's what we like playing. But we were in a school in Cape Town, but it was Parel Gymnasium, is it? Some fancy school in Paul. All right, some van daai ou skole, jy verstaan. So I don't know how, but somehow we got booked to play the Matric dance.
Oh, what?
First of all, almost nothing that we played was danceable. You know,
it seems like.
But anyway,
you guys,
we're not
Highway Star from
playing prog rock.
No, we were not a winning band. You know. Anyway, there we were. I don't know. The kids booked us, but there we were. So we set up on the one side of this huge school hall on a little makeshift stage, and the dance floor. You know, the area in front would now be the dance floor, and then there was a tables to the side where they had, you know, they first eat. You know. Matric dance, they first eat, and then so there's them, and then on the other side of the wall from us, there's the table where all the teachers are. They're also there, but then the party is when they go home, basically. So at first we were told, look, there's going to be some speeches, and then while they eat, can we play some soft background music while they eat? And then later, okay, so we nodded yes, but we don't know what soft. You know, we had no. Basically, sound systems were so unbelievably primitive. We had little column speakers that nobody could hear the vocals. And if it's a bigger hall, you use a bigger amp. If that means drowning out everybody, tough shit. Monitors did not exist. Monitors did not yet exist.
Not at all. You didn't have any wedges at all.
Nothing. It didn't exist. We didn't know what they were. They came later. In South Africa, anyway. In South Africa, at least. Anyway. We used to see pictures of our heroes, you know, and they're on stage, and there's these boxes at their feet. And we used to think there was probably lights in there or something. We had no idea.
Funny.
We had no idea what they were. Seriously. Anyway, so there we were. So we can't play loud or soft. We play like we play, you know. The guitarist has got a Marshall. So I'm hit the drums as hard as I can because otherwise nobody can hear me. So that's our level. And he's not going to turn down because the Marshall sounds like it.
That's how it goes, isn't it?
Yes. So anyway, so we play
the loud guy. You don't go softer.
Yeah.
It's like I can't hear you. You must go louder, and no one's going to go softer.
No. So that's where you are. That's where you are. Anyway, so they're eating now, and we start playing. And about halfway through the first song, I could see there's much uneasiness at this table where the teachers are. The kids seem to be, but they clearly are not liking this loud, very weird rock music when they want soft background music. So at some point I know it's the guy, he's the headmaster. He gets up and he's now walking across this empty, now the whole wall's watching him. He's walking across this empty floor towards the band. And there's clearly a shit coming now. Everybody's watching this. And we're watching it. But Isak's playing, he's on the sort of the right-hand side of this little stage. And he's got his eyes closed. But the oak, for some reason, approaches that side of the stage. And his plan was to tell us, he seriously thought we were like a record player. You can just turn us down a bit, you know? So I see him standing there. I'm playing drums, but I see him standing there by Isak's amp. And he sees the volume button. And he probably thought, so Isak's playing with his eyes closed. He's not aware of this. And the guy turns down his volume. And Isak suddenly eyes open. What's wrong? And he sees this fucking toppy fiddling with his volume button, so he claps him.
No way. And he was off in the school, right?
He's the headmaster, so he fuck off. And he turns his amp back up, and the oak slunk back across the stage. I swear that we were the heroes forever with those kids, because they all hated this headmaster, and that was just like the cherry on the cake of everything. It was the best moment in his school career.
That's going to put you down in history, definitely, no doubt.
So that's Isak, eh?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite memories of him, the song that I sent you recently, the one that I wrote him, there's a line in that song that says, "Fuck the neighbors, I couldn't be bothered."
Yeah.
And that song came from the first time that Isak and I jammed at my house.
Yeah.
Now I have to say I was in a complex where it's like you get a block with 4 flats, a lot of them, you know. So it's not even a house in a complex, it's a flat in a complex. And we had a drum kit. I was on acoustic guitar and Isak was on bass. So you can fucking only imagine how loud that was. And and then someone came to complain. And I was trying to be all polite and everything, and I walked back inside, and Isak's like, "Fuck the neighbors." So that dude, he loved to make noise.
Oh. No, that was the story of us growing up. Like nobody wanted this. You know what I mean? It was us against the world. Everybody told us to shut up and stop playing that noise.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That's all we heard. That's except from our friends who liked it. That's the only feedback we ever heard. So everybody's your enemy, and you just become, well, fuck you all then. I'm going to do this.
I've got another
it's a constant battle. You know what I mean? So I understand. That's where Isak comes from, and I totally understand it.
That battle kind of is still going on. But I'll say that I had a friend. He's like an English South African, so he's from Britain, but he grew up between the two countries. And they were also. This was in the 80s. They had a band in Joburg.
Yeah.
And they moved their stuff into this one place, and the neighbor, this old guy, came over. He's like, "Oh, you play music?" So he's like, "Yeah." So the old man's like, "What kind of music do you play?" He's like, "Well, I guess alternative." And the old man's like, "Alternative to what?" So he says, "Whatever you're listening to."
That's so accurate, though. I mean,
not wrong. Spot on.
So Willem, that was more or less when you guys were in matric. More or less, what year was that?
That was 1975.
75. Okay. So that was in Cape Town. Okay. So where did you go from there? So now you guys left school. I went to Stellenbosch University. So I did Isak actually he was there as well. I remember him telling me about that. Yeah, we drove to Stellenbosch one day, and he told me.
Yeah, he studied commerce, but then the other thing is now at that time there was conscription. Everybody had to go to the freaking army for 2 years. You know, there was that shit to deal with, and nobody wanted to. So one way you could like at least delay it is by going to university. So I opted for that, so did Isak. But then in the end, Isak figured out that if he joined permanent force for 4 years, that's it. They never bother him again because they kept bothering you for camps. You could get called up for camps for 10 years later after.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
3 months,
if there's
month, a year or what?
If there's conflict.
No, there was a war.
Okay, but then they can call you up and...
Yes, there was a war. There was conscription. There was a war in Namibia and Angola and locally. And you had to do, at first it was a year. By the time I went, it was 2 years. And then they call you up for camps after that, once a year for a month. So, I mean, we hated all of this shit and anything to get out of it. Anyway, Isak figured out they had a deal. If you join a permanent force for 4 years, that's it. They never bother you again. And so, and if you're a student, they pay for your studies while you're studying.
Oh,
so he signed up for that with the Navy.
Do that, I think, actually.
I don't know, but they had this deal, and then they would pay for your studies, and then you immediately become an officer because you've got a degree. And then you're in a much better place if you're not in the. And he joined the Navy. He was based here in Simonstown, and he did a very easy office job for 4 years. He got paid a professional salary. And he finished his degree, and they paid for his studies. Some deal like that. So he made a sweet deal.
Clever.
Yeah. And in fact, I must tell you where I live now. It's a place called Glencairn. It's just outside Simonstown, on the Cape Peninsula. And Glencairn is like a long valley with a river down the middle, and there's two sides. It's built up on either side. And the southern side was the old part that was built up first, 100 years ago. And then in 1980, they started developing the other side, the other hill, which is now totally built up as well. That's what I look at them. And Isak was the first person to buy a plot there and build a house on that whole area. The house is still there. In 1980, which is now a big suburb, he had the first house there. He built it.
So crazy, yeah?
Yeah, I still look at it and think of him,
Anyway, that's something I didn't know about him,
And that's what he did while he was an officer in the Navy in Simonstown. And that was early 80s, early, I'm not sure exactly when he went. It must have been 79, 80 somewhere, and he spent a few years there. After that, I moved to Joburg. So I kind of lost contact. Isak went to the Garden Route. He lived there for a long time in the George area. And I think Dispatch and Uniondale, places like that.
Sure.
Yeah, he managed supermarkets and furniture shops. I mean, he trained as a manager. So that's what he did for a living. He did well in it. But I kind of lost contact with him, and then we reconnected many years later. Yeah.
And in that time, so now you guys were in bands in school, sort of finding your feet. And that was in the mid 70s, right? So Volfrey, that was late 80s, right?
Yes.
So
that was much later.
So in the meantime, were you still active in music and?
No, all along. I never stopped. At Varsity, I met a whole bunch of other people that I jammed with and played with, and that I'm still friends with, many of them. Steve Lowe is a singer-songwriter. I still work with him to this day. And other people, Ozzy and Extian, these are some of my oldest, dearest friends. All people I met at Varsity who played music and wrote songs, and we formed bands and jammed and so on. Rob Nagel of the Blues Brews.
Awesome.
We were a whole gang of people. Anyway, that was great, and I was at Stellenbosch for 5 years. But what happened there, around about that time, 76, say, I'd kind of, I've been listening now for 5-6 years to almost nothing but hard rock with heavy guitar riffs and solos. Those kind of the blues rock stuff that, Hendrix and Cream, Led Zeppelin. It was all from that school. Yeah. And I don't know, I just reached a point where I'm bored with this now. I need to hear something else. You know what I mean? I just sort of drifted okay, I've heard this now. I need to hear something else. And I drifted into jazz. Okay. Into a huge major way where I just spent 3-4 years at university listening to nothing but jazz, and I taught myself the whole history of jazz. I just researched the whole genre and got myself entirely clued up.
Sure.
And jazz is the music I listen to the most.
Like what kind of artist though? If you had to name a couple of top ones.
The first person I got into was Django Reinhardt, who's a gypsy jazz guitarist he was famous in the 30s and 40s, before World War II.
Sure.
Acoustic guitar player, and he had two fingers. He could only play with two fingers.
On which hand though? On his strumming hand or his?
No, on his left hand. His left hand. He was in an accident, and he could use the other two fingers were almost fused together. His pinky and his next finger were almost fused together. So he had the first two to work with.
Jeez.
And he could somehow, if you hear him, it is the most ridiculous guitar playing you'll ever hear. It's the most fluent, flying stuff at ridiculous speed.
Insane,
plus all the jazz chording. But he figured out a way to use the other fingers in the chords as a sort of a mini bar and things like that.
Oh, wow.
But when you hear him, you'll never know. But he does hammer-ons, pull-ons. He was way ahead of his time. He was bending and vibratoing, all that stuff long before blues guitarists started doing that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Electric guitar. He was an absolute pioneer and a huge inspiration for many people. He played a style of jazz that I call gypsy jazz. It's all acoustic instruments, usually acoustic guitars, 2 for rhythm, no drums. 2 acoustic guitars as the rhythm, the double bass, and then 2 front instruments, django on guitar, and the violinist.
Jeez,
Sometimes a clarinet player, but they call themselves the hot quintet, the Hot Club de France. They were based in Paris in the 1930s. People still, there's a whole school of music, people who just study this music and still trying to figure out how the hell did they play that stuff. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And the gypsy element is in the chord voicings, which comes from Balkan music in Middle Europe. It's a Yiddish influence, actually, from Jewish music. Jewish folk music uses minor chords and major chords together in a unique way. And that you find it in gypsy music, and gypsy spread all over Europe. So you find those scales in flamenco music.
And
Django played jazz, but he had that background as well. So he blended these two. So it becomes a jazz, but it's exotic sounding. You know what I mean? Anyway, that was... I was now listening to all these very fast guitar players, like everybody, like who's the fastest? All that shit when you're a kid. And then, I don't know, somebody said, yeah, but you guys haven't heard Django Reinhardt. Who? He's faster than all of these guys. Bullshit. No, listen to that. Anyway, so I found a record and I got it. And then that got me into listening to jazz. And then the next guy was another one person said, nah, these guys aren't so fast. Listen to John McLaughlin. I never heard of John McLaughlin, so they gave me this record, The Inner Mounting Flame by the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Jeez.
This is exotic cover, these people floating in the flame on the cover. And this just completely changed my world. I recommend you guys, both of you. You're a drummer, Dolf?
Yes.
Billy Cobham? Ever heard of Billy Cobham?
No, I haven't. No.
Where you been?
These
are the guys who invented it all. Anyway, go and listen to it's on YouTube, In the Mounting Flame by the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Go and listen to it and listen to the drums.
Awesome.
Okay.
We'll do.
This was recorded in 1970. You will not believe it. Anyway, the guitar player, John McLaughlin, British jazz guitarist, but he'd moved to America and he was into Indian music and world music and all kinds of stuff, completely open-minded. He's an amazing person. I'm still a huge fan of him to this day as a human being and as a musician. He's my person who's opened my ears the most to music. Anyway, so on this record, he plays in the John Coltrane style. This is not about jazz theory and stuff, but John Coltrane is a saxophone player, came up with a different approach to harmony than everybody else. Kind of revolutionized how you can play things. But one of the things he did is he had an unbelievable technique. He could play so fast on a saxophone, on a tenor, that the notes blur into a sort of one sound. He used it as an improvisational tool as one of the things you use, against long notes, and then suddenly you have this blur of notes. So it's not to show how fast he is. It's an expression of one of the tools he used. He calls it sheets of sounds. That's what he called it.
That's impressive.
Yes. Yeah, but you guys don't know John Coltrane? Go and dig out
No.
something.
I'm gonna,
Well, where you been? Anyway,
we're
it'll
getting
change your life.
we're being educated now. I'm
Okay.
definitely gonna listen to some jazz tonight, and the names that you gave me.
Go listen to Giant Steps. It changed jazz to totally turn it up on its head. Album called Giant Steps. Just go listen to it.
I'm
You'll see what
literally
I mean.
making
Anyway, John McLaughlin was usually influenced by that too, and he wanted to do that on a guitar, and he had the technique to play that fast, but he wanted that blurry sound, so he came with extreme saturation. Okay, the totally fuzzed sound.
Okay.
You know what I mean by saturation.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So distorted that the notes sustained forever. So instead of sounding like a guitar, it sounds like an oboe or a saxophone.
Right.
You know what I mean? Long. It's not the attack.
Yeah.
The beginning of a guitar note has an attack, tang, and then it fades away. This is now the opposite. It goes forever. So you use that sound, which is the sound that Jimi Hendrix, when he was really feeding back the totally fuzzed out, distorted sound. That sound.
Yeah.
Eric Clapton used with Cream. It's just the saturation, turn up a Marshall or a fuzz box.
Yeah.
You use that sound in jazz that had never been heard, but an extreme version of fun that creates this sheets of sound effect.
Sure.
So that record just changed everything. After that, a lot of music I've been listening to sounded totally stupid and pointless. It's one of those things that's like, whoa, there's another world out there. Okay, so that set me off in a direction. And then I happened to find a book in a library about the history of jazz. Well, okay. And this book happens to end with that record. It was written just after that record. And it kind of takes it up to there. It says, this is now where the future is going to go. And then then I read what John McLaughlin had done just before that. The 3 albums he worked on just before that album. And that's kind of where he got this interest. So I decided to check out those albums. Now, all 3 Miles Davis albums.
Oh, wow.
Have you heard of Miles Davis?
That name we know.
Okay, all right. So those happen to be the 3 Miles Davis albums that kind of changed where jazz became electric, where it became a different approach to jazz again turned jazz upside down. That led to fusion jazz and jazz rock and all those things. But at the time, it was so revolutionary and so modern. If you listen, can I write some more down, guys?
Yes, please.
Miles Davis.
I'm writing.
In a silent way. That's the birth of ambient music, what we call ambient music today. It was born right there, 1969. And then 2 from 1970, Bitches Brew.
Also Miles Davis.
Yeah, and a tribute to Jack Johnson. Tribute to Jack Johnson, it's called. Those 3 albums, just go and listen to them.
Cool.
There's also another Miles one on the Corner, which is the first album that is what we know today as what's common in dub and trance music, using loops and samples to create things. That was done by with tape recorders in 1972.
That's nuts, eh?
So this is futuristic music. I mean, at the time, people didn't know what the hell to make. Now, Miles, before this, had a 30-year career as a traditional jazz musician. The traditional jazz world do not like electric instruments and all this shit, you see.
Yeah.
So he divorced himself from his core market entirely.
It's almost about Dylan's story. It's almost about Dylan's story.
It's something similar, but Bob created a new audience, and Miles did the same in a much bigger audience. Anyway, he basically then appealed to, he could play at hippie festivals. He played at the Isle of Wight festival.
Sure.
Oh, wow.
Where 600, instead of playing to 100 people in a jazz club, he was playing to 600,000 hippies on a field of mud, you know. Anyway, so those 3 albums, John McLaughlin played on all 3, and he's a major part in what happened on those 3 albums. Yeah. So then I got, okay, this is what John McLaughlin is about. And then, so from there, I got sucked into Miles Davis. And I went back. Miles Davis is the history of modern jazz. He started from 1945 in Charlie Parker's band when he was 19. And every development in jazz after that was something that Miles did that led to a new direction.
Sure.
He's been at the forefront of jazz since that time. And in a way that he never repeats himself. He gets bored. So he does something that's usually successful. A lot of people now are also doing that, and then he's bored of it, and he starts something new. He's one of those people always looking for a new way. Yeah. And that's totally inspiring. I mean, when you listen to him and how he's constantly looking for new ways of expression, And the band he got together in the middle part of the 60s, and me, the best band ever in the universe. The way those people interact and the way they play together and the music they created spontaneously together is on a level that to this day people study at the universities. What the hell happened there? The Miles Davis Quintet of the 60s, if you get any of those records.
Well, I think we just got a very good fucking education. I think our algorithms on our Spotify accounts are going to change pretty soon.
Okay, enough about jazz. Anyway, so that sucked me into jazz, and I hear music like a jazz player. I mean, I don't really play jazz. I don't have bebop training. I'm not, at that level, but I can play modal jazz, which is one of the things Miles started. This is basically playing in modes. That I'm very good at, that I can do. But the way I hear phrasing and melody and particularly articulation on every note, all that shit is totally influenced by jazz. And when I play guitar, I come out more like a trumpet player. I mean, I don't sound like a trumpet player, but the phrases I'm likely to play.
Yeah.
I think
you know what I mean? It's,
I think I've never listened to the right jazz because I've never gotten into jazz because the stuff that I've heard, but also I have a very easy listening ear, if that makes any sense. But it's the same with prog. Like I've heard some Mastodon that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
But then play me other prog and I'm like, I'm losing it, guys. And it's the same with jazz. Like, I mean, I heard the jazz stuff that Frank Zappa did. I don't even know if you're allowed to call it jazz, but you know what I mean.
Well, it's improvisational, and that's the core element in jazz. So wherever improvising happens, you're doing something that's core to jazz. So, but it doesn't mean, I mean, jazz, I'm also not wild about genres because that's one of the things Miles did. They didn't really know what to call this music anymore. It's played by jazz musicians, but it doesn't sound like jazz that they know.
Yeah, I think genres.
You know what I mean?
I think genres.
So that's for me. That's when it gets interesting. When you don't know what genre it is, that's when it gets interesting for me.
I think what I like about the genre boxes is it helps conversation.
Yeah, no, for sure. No,
it's the only way that I can explain to you that I've never listened to jazz is by calling it jazz.
No, but that's exactly the problem because I found many people they hate punk. Okay, well, what punk have you listened to? Well, when I made some things, it's not what I would call punk, but anyway, and I played them some Sex Pistols. They love it.
They
love it. No, we never listened to it because we always thought it was shit because it's punk, but they never actually listened to it. So I just say, forget genres, forget everything. Just listen.
Yeah, in that sense, I completely agree. Like, don't put it in the box and close it. But
many people have preconceptions that kind of stop them from listening any further. You know what I mean? That's actually bullshit. It works against you. It keeps your ears closed. So
don't shove it in a box and tape it up. Like, leave the box open and let's talk about it. but it definitely helps conversation genres. But if you look at metal, especially all the subgenres, it makes me crazy.
Don't even get me started. There's so many new ones.
That's why I don't even bother. I mean, who the hell cares?
No, it makes me crazy. I just call it metal.
Is it blacker?
If it's Black Sabbath or Slipknot, I call it metal.
What's the new ones? Alien Core?
What?
Yeah, Alien Core.
Are you joking?
I don't know what that actually entails.
Well, I mean, there's another way of looking at it. I often look at music in terms of what scales do they use, because that unifies them. You know what I mean? If it uses a particular kind of scale, or if there's a lot of improvisation on it, which you find in a lot of blues, a lot of jazz, a lot of world music, a lot of improvisation. Call it improvisational music because musicians who can improvise can work together. It doesn't matter what genre they come from. There's millions of examples. John McLaughlin had a band for years with classical Indian musicians. They can't even speak English. These guys know nothing. They come from an entirely different culture. But they can both improvise. They're really brilliant musicians. And they had this incredible band called Shakti. You can check it out. Shakti, traditional Indian classical music with John McLaughlin on acoustic guitar.
Indian music is
insane music. In classical Indian music with acoustic guitar played by John McLaughlin. But they find each other in a way. Tabla master, not any tabla player, bro. Like the number one oak in the world.
The tabla master.
And a violin player, Indian violin. They use violin in Indian classical music, but playing Indian scales. And the master of that, they were the two guys along with John McLaughlin who formed Shakti.
Crazy stuff.
Sure.
And a fourth guy was also a percussionist. He played the clay pot. They use a clay pot that they hit and they get a million sounds out of it.
Interesting.
and a tabla master.
We're going to try that, Dolf.
Yeah. Grab a clay pot.
Anyway, so yeah, about genres. So enough about that. But I would say, just go down a wormhole and check things out. Just to explore. I often find that two things. If you want to know why something is the way it is, look at its history, because nothing falls out of the air fully formed. Everything develops out of something else. So if you want to see, for instance, why this guy's playing like that, check what he did before, check what he listened to, or where did that come from, because then you can understand maybe why he's suddenly doing this.
Yeah.
It gives you an understanding. You know what I mean? Things come from somewhere. Yeah, and if you look at it like that, you get a better understanding of what you can do with it. I mean, I produce a lot of people, so always like where can I take this? What can I do with it? Where does it come from? Because then I might know where to go with it.
For sure. But now, for you, Willem, being a producer, like I must say, like the first time I was in an actual studio ever was last year. I recorded 2 singles before we guys got this band together. And the value of a good producer, it's out of this world, because if I had a certain expectation going in there, but the result, because of the producer's experience, was overwhelming. I never knew what you can do. I never knew what it can sound like. And he brought that out. So it is so valuable, man.
No, that's a good producer, because that's kind of the thing, is to, like you say, is to take your idea that you have and bring it to life, like make you see what it can be. Take it to its, what it can be.
Give it its full potential.
You know what I mean?
Like I write the song, but he's gonna make this thing a monster.
He's gonna produce it into
and that for me was such a learning curve and such an experience to like be a part of that and see what this guy can do with my minimal skills, because that's before the band. When the band went in there, he did the same, but then there was like a powerhouse of skill, And the value of a producer, but do you look at someone and just listen to the song? How do you arrive at what sound you need to give it? Because that would mess my brain up.
Well, first of all, the word producer can mean at least a million things. You know what I mean? In any given situation, what exactly do you do when you call yourself the producer? There's absolutely no definition. It's whatever it takes to get a finished product. So, in a lot of hip hop productions, the producer is the guy who makes the beat. So he's the guy who sits with the synths and the drum machines and whatever and comes up with a beat, and then the rapper comes and writes the lyrics and rap over. So that's what they call a producer.
Okay,
it's the guy who makes the music part of it, the track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what producer means in that sense. If you look at, say, the Beatles and George Martin, which is just where you can study all this stuff, because those people invented all this shit. There, the role of the producer was an older guy, bit more experienced, well-versed in studios and what you can achieve in studios, musical training so you can help with musical arrangements, and also just a calming influence. When you can see in the band there's some problems between them, he's the guy who can sort of soothe it out. You know what I mean? So he plays. That's a big part of production, is a psychological role, keeping people calm and in a good space and giving positive feedback so that they don't feel bad about themselves. Ozzy, like you say, the first time you're in a studio, I get that often. People are insecure. They're out of their depth.
I hate singing in studios.
Yeah, and you can say and you may be the producer. You may be the person they're kind of looking up to in the situation. And if you can say one thing that can destroy their confidence.
Oh yeah,
that's very true.
You know what I mean? And people do that. So it's very important that you assess this person. What support does this person need? Because what you need to get out of them is a good performance. That's all.
Yeah.
If you do something that fucks it up, you're doing a wrong thing. If you can somehow, in a way, support them to make them feel whatever they need to feel to give a good performance, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And what that is in a particular situation can be anything.
Yeah,
so some people come with, a band called Hatchet Man, fantastic band here in Cape Town. I think they're releasing their single today that we recorded here.
Okay.
In their situation, Yeah, that
I'm
band,
making another note.
Hatchet Man. The single is called "A Dream." It's a great song. Anyway, the guy writes a song, Jono, and the band. They rehearse that thing. They decide on every little detail exactly how they want it. All the guitar parts, all the harmony vocals. They rehearse it. Fucked up. They come in the studio. I basically just have to get a good sound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't have to come up with ideas for them. They've done all their homework, which means we're very productive in the studio. It goes quick.
Yeah. Totally.
Then you get people who have no idea. They haven't even thought, but
They just kind of live in the moment. Yeah.
Well, they don't. Either they don't have the imagination, or they're too lazy, or they genuinely have. No, I mean they write the song, right?
So they come to you with a concept. They don't come to you with a complete product.
Yeah,
right?
they come with they strum some chords and they've got a melody and some words. Okay, it's a song, but now what do you want? Do you want to, how do you want it to sound? How do you envisage it? Because then we can go in that direction. But if this person has nothing, it kind of leaves me. Well, what do you want me to do? Because I need the artist to tell me. At the end, they must feel, this is who I want to be. This is how I want my music to sound. I must represent me. Mm-hmm. But they got to give me a clue, a direction. Like, how do you see yourself? Where do you want to,
Yeah,
totally.
So I've done stuff where people can't really tell me, or they can't articulate it, or they haven't thought about it, or it's not, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I'll try something, and then it's a question of, not really. And then slowly something crystallizes. Okay, that's actually, but I have to go through this process with them.
Yeah.
Of trying, you know what I mean? Trying things to see what works for this song, because they haven't got their own vision for it.
Yeah, I guess it's another way of doing it. Yeah, and I think in that sense, the producer is like sort of essential.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, this guy needs me because he can't put the stuff together, but he also doesn't know what he wants. So, I mean, there are situations like that has happened on those real pop labels that are like ruthless about getting hits. Yeah. They'll sign an artist, but we've got a formula about how we make records with our producer, and that's how your record's going to sound. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's we don't worry. We're not interested in what you think. You must just come and sing. Yeah. So you had those producers as well. And it's usually a terrible contract that these artists are signed to and so on, where there's no artistic input, basically.
Yeah.
They're just a performer. So, I mean, obviously I'm not interested in anything like that. I like to work with artists, and I like to make them realize their vision for their song.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I've got the studio skill and experience and all kinds of things I can contribute and add to help do that for them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I think that was our experience in studio. I
definitely.
think that's
Joe was amazing.
Yeah, that's
I was
what we
blown
had.
away.
Yeah.
He was really, really good. Yeah. I mean, I've played drums on a few albums, but it's always kind of been me driving the whole session from the drummer seat. Kind of saying, that take was all right, cool, I can do better, let's do a few more. But he was in the driver's seat the whole time, telling me what to do.
Well, you see, when you're performing, it's great to have somebody like that. It's somebody
really
that you respect and trust their opinion, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to step outside of yourself and say, okay, that was a great take. I mean, I know very experienced people who have no problem doing it, and they know exactly when it's a great take, when it isn't. Other people don't. They're too close to it,
Yeah.
So I can see, that's the take that is going to get people right in the balls,
Yeah.
And this other one, the guy wants to go with this one because he thought he pitched a little bit better in that one, but it doesn't got any of the emotion.
We did that on one of our songs. On one of our songs, in the end, like the literally the last line of the song, my voice actually broke. Yeah. And Joe and the entire band said, that's the take.
Yeah, it didn't feel to you like it was.
No, I was, because I wanted to be perfect. As a vocalist, I want to sound perfect out there, Right. And everyone, including the producer, was like, that's the take.
Yeah.
No, but that's the thing. You see, I think, I spoke about, but that's over. I was going to refer to what I said in the previous one, but it doesn't apply now. About Joe and Joanna Public. You heard of those two people?
Yes.
Joe and Joanna Public. I just call them the Publics. They are the people we bother to record music for. They are not our musicians' friends. They are not sound engineers and producers. They're average, normal people. You know what I mean? Normal people, they don't play an instrument. They don't know what you're talking about when you say EQ and, pitch and what? They don't know. It's not. It's actually none of their business either. What they know is when it makes them feel good, when they enjoy it.
Yeah,
that's all that matters, and that is all that matters. If you make music that technically perfect and impresses your musa friends, great. But why bother? Because unless if that makes you happy, which I suppose can. But if you're actually bothering to record and release it, surely, you know what I mean? It's not just for those people. It's hopefully for the others out there who are going to hopefully maybe spend some rands on it.
Yeah, it's all about stirring a feeling.
And it doesn't matter how technically perfect your thing. If they don't enjoy it or find a reason to listen to it or find it boring or doesn't connect with them, or it's pointless. But they connect to emotion. It's an emotional experience for them listening to music. So when a vocal take where when somebody really means this, man, it gets to you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And that's what matters. So keeping that perspective from a producer point of view is very important.
Yeah, I've got to sorry, yeah?
No, I find it, I've had to teach myself because I record a lot. I play guitar and I do all kinds of shit. That don't go for the perfect take. Go for the one that's got that quirky, slightly, because you remember that.
Yeah.
And I remember from the records that I listened to in my teens that made a huge impression on me. In those days, people didn't quantize things. There weren't guitar tuners. They didn't edit out little mistakes because they couldn't. It was on tape. It was impossible.
Wait a second. Were there no guitar tuners? I mean, it makes sense now. That
they had strobe tuners in studios. Yeah, but I mean, tuning wasn't the thing it later became where everybody had a guitar tuner.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, on record, sometimes you could hear that.
Yeah, I know some Zeppelin songs where the guitar sounds a bit out.
Yeah, and here and there, notice bend flats, or or Robert Plant doesn't quite hit it, but they didn't have auto tune for the voice. So but when I listened to those records, it never bothered me for a second because everything else hit me in the face.
Still right there. Yeah.
And then those things are actually immaterial. I mean, they're not what's important.
I've got.
It's important. If you're a performer, you want to get it as right as possible. But if you absolutely nail the emotion, forget about a few flaws.
Yeah,
you got to have that. So I've taught myself about my guitar playing as well. I mean, I can play that cleaner. Maybe my session guitar playing buddy would think, but fuck him because that one's got the emotion.
Right.
Anyway, so that's part of being a producer. You have to constantly bear that perspective. Like, why are we doing this?
That's something I learned quite recently. Is I'm quite hard on myself as a musician because I'm surrounded by so much talent. There's almost like a weight on your shoulder because I feel like I don't live up to what I see around me. If I look at people like Jan Daniel or Gerard, and how amazing they are. And then it puts a bit of a weight on you. And I realized eventually that when I played, let's say I play a solo acoustic show, my concern was always, I'm not playing fancy guitar. I'm playing simple guitar. This is boring. The people don't like it. But then something snapped and I realized, hold on, I can con them with emotion.
Oh, basically.
If I can make it that way. I can con them.
It's not con them. It's not con them. That's actually the point.
But I was like,
emotion.
And then I started working on that. I started working on my voice. And emotion in the music, and I must say that I saw results.
Yeah,
because I was so insecure playing solo acoustic shows, but I was doing it anyway. And then eventually I started feeling better about it because I realized I'm getting a reaction because I'm not focusing on doing anything fancy on the guitar. I'm not being technical. I'm just delivering an emotion.
Yeah. That's what it's about at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I think I mentioned it last time, but an album that also changed the way I hear music dramatically was Darkness on the Edge of Town, Bruce Springsteen. I must just say something else that, I grew up, the first music I ever listened to was before the Beatles.
Yeah.
It was, 1950s rock and roll, and there was a big instrumental guitar craze in the early 60s with the Shadows and the Dwayne Eddy and the Ventures and all twangy instrumental electric guitar. Pop records, but featuring electric guitar as the lead instrument. It was a popular genre. And I grew up with this. And from when I was 2-3 years old, my brother played these records. So twang guitars in my genes. I was destined to play a guitar one day. Anyway, and in the 60s was a huge explosion of pop music from the Beatles and everybody else. It just exploded worldwide. There was a whole counterculture developed in the 1960s that was also anti-establishment and anti-authority and anti-war and all that stuff. So there was a whole sense in the air in the 60s and continuing through to the 70s of a different culture, a different, and it attracted me hugely, especially growing up in this country, which I could see as the opposite of that. And this is what I feel at home with. So I went there. And by I don't know, the all kinds of developments of music in that era, the loud blues, people started turning up the amplifiers playing blues, and suddenly you had this heavy rock of Hendrix and Cream and Zeppelin, basically playing blues, but very loud.
Yeah.
And the sound changed and became a different kind of music, very much more aggressive. And out of that came the heavy riffs and eventually Black Sabbath. You know what I mean? So that development took place, but at the same time, folk music was a big thing. Folk singer-songwriters playing acoustic guitar, singing folk music. There was another genre that was popular, especially in America, especially in colleges, with people like Joan Baez and Bob Dylan and so on.
Yeah.
And by the late 60s, this had become a much more broader movement, especially as these songwriters were very much associated with the anti-establishment sentiment of the time. And they started making records, not just acoustic guitar and voice, but with a band, and started having much more impact. And especially centered around the West Coast, the singer-songwriter movement. It was really flowering by 1970 and so on. And for some reason, I got sucked into that as well. So I became very aware of songs and singing and beautiful harmony singing and acoustic guitars and beautifully recorded records. It's not heavy rock.
Yeah.
Albums like Tapestry by Carole King. It's just fantastic songwriting, just beautiful songs. Just she on a piano and just fleshed out with minimal bass drums and stuff. Just awesome records. Neil Young, Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, James Taylor. Beautiful music. So that really got me into that side of music. I was never just into heavy rock.
Yeah,
I liked that at the same time. I also liked disco music of the 70s. R&B had become disco music. It was basically just R&B with a beat. That was fantastic music. It was long before it became house and EDM. It was played by, the drums were played by humans.
I was about to say we might have to edit that part out. I'm joking.
The drums were played by humans, which made it different. It meant it felt different. It wasn't quantized. It had a tension built into it, and they could funkify it. They could play little variations.
There's some good songs and great musicians. I mean, shit, there was some good stuff.
Anyway, so I was listening to all this stuff. I love ABBA. I don't know if you've ever... Swedish pop music. It was the kitschest, most bubblegum pop. Brilliant records.
Why do you hate ABBA?
Fucking hate it. Sorry, guys.
How can you not?
I'm not with you guys on that one. No. You guys can have this conversation.
I know why you hate them. A lot of people hate them, but that's the other thing. That I developed an ability sometimes to listen for things for various reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, I know about ABBA, and it was just really cheesy pop music. But then one time I really listened to the record. It's astonishing record productions.
I've heard lots of people tell me that how great musicians they were, and I just usually the conversation.
At some point, also there, when I was a kid, I would read all these, I was obsessed with this shit. So I'd read every word on an album cover. Who's the engineer? Who's the producer? So I realized these people play a role, and you see the same names popping up. Tommy Dowd. Tom Dowd. I'd see these names on Aretha Franklin album, my favorite singer, a soul, straight ahead Southern soul. I see it on Cream record, Eric Clapton solo records. I see it on jazz records. I see it on John Coltrane records. I see it all over. Tommy Dowd.
That sounds a bit like a Rick Rubin.
Well, he was the Rick Rubin of his time. Not the same, but I mean, he was equally everywhere. Yeah. This name just popped up and made me aware. But there are these people that do this stuff. And who was I talking about now?
I can't remember the name. Some producer / engineer.
Tommy Dowd.
Yes, that's the name.
Then I eventually I got all these jazz records going back, and I saw his name is there from the early 1950s into the 1990s.
Jeez.
Oh, wow. Tom Dowd had a career. I mean, he was a pioneer of audio recording and microphones, and he invented a whole lot of things. He invented what we call a mixing desk today, the way it looks.
What
the hell?
You're kidding?
Yeah,
It was like
you know what I mean.
It
It never looked like that. The way we know today with faders and stuff, he was the first guy to think like that. He was an absolute pioneer. So these guys have been around for a long time. So I realized, look what they do and listen to what they do, and why does it sound so much better than the other guys? So I started listening to production and recording. And by young, I had my favorite engineers, Eddie Offord. Oh my God, that guy. His records recorded in 1970 sounds as good today. It does not sound dated by 1 second.
Wow.
These guys really knew this shit. What's his name? Bruce Botwick. Those guys, nothing has changed in the techniques that they use. They just perfected it. Anyway, so ABBA's records are amazing production. So I can listen to ABBA's records all day, and I guess cheesy pop songs. So what? I appreciate the production.
As ek nou kom braai kan ons iets anders luister.
So anyway, that's a big thing for me. Yeah. I want to say after
Ek wil net genoem het ons gaan ook die topics cover wat ons laas gecover het, hoor.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, cool.
I just want to say, you were asking when I was at varsity. So after varsity,
yes,
I did have to go to the army, but I managed to. By then, I had a degree, so they put me in the admin unit where I hooked up with some guys.
2 years.
We were all graduates, and we had this 18-year-old corporal trying to shout at us, and we just looked at him and, "Fuck you, man!" And we connived ways every day to not do anything. We outwitted him day by day throughout basics, and then they gave us office jobs and left us alone after that. So that was my army. I didn't go to the border. I never had to, carry a gun. They gave me an office. I was treated as a professional, so I was given an office in a car and left alone. Anyway, so in that time, I just played music. I just totally involved in all kinds of bands. And I've got together with some friends of mine a band called Nothing Personal. And by this stage, I bypassed punk when it happened, or at least the British punk of 76, 77, because I was listening to jazz. I was listening to jazz. But when I picked up on it, I absolutely loved it. And it was this, it was just like the Who live at Leeds 1970s, or New York Dolls, or Grateful Dead, or all these people that I had been listening to just sped up a bit. Mick Ronson's guitar on David Bowie records, that's the sound of punk and so on. So I recognize all this stuff, but I like the energy and I like what they had to say. I love the Pistols. To this day, those are anthems to live by. God save the Queen. She ain't no human being.
That's damn straight, I think a lot of people saw the punk scene as silly, but shit, the stuff that people had to say was listen, profound.
There were a million bands, and 999,000 of them were shit. The good ones that we know about today were fucking brilliant.
I mean, the stuff Joe Strummer had to say, holy shit.
Yes, there's no Clash. I love those guys. I also love the Jam. Great band. Anyway, so I got into all that. So we had this band. We were playing not punk, but we were certainly. The energy we had a punk attitude. But the guy that we'd been playing blues, and I was a huge Who fan, Pete Townsend. His chordal work in a 3-piece. That's genius for me. What he played on a guitar in a 3-piece band. So the big chiming chords. The different approach, not riffs. Big chiming chords that make it sound orchestral with a bass that plays more than one note. That plays also not chords, but harmonics in the note. So you get an orchestral effect between a guitar and a bass. I mean, the Who's amazing. So we try to do that in this band. That's some of that, And we had a nice singer and a nice drummer, and we were quite successful. We played lots of shows, and then we moved to Joburg. Yeah, this was 82, 83.
The whole band, did the whole band go, like, as a band? Making, oh, wow.
We were young, in those days. I must also tell you, I think it was so fucked up. There was one little area in this country where some sanity reigned, like a little island of sanity. It was Hillbrow and Yeovil, two central Joburg suburbs, next to each other, two central Joburg suburbs. There, a whole lot of people congregated, and basically by common consent, and eventually with an agreement of the police station there, fuck apartheid. Everything goes in this place.
Nice.
All the rules, the segregation, all that stupid shit that they imposed everywhere else. There, basically, it was very cosmopolitan. People from all over the world. Everybody lived there. Everybody did just whatever they wanted. It was a 24-hour places. You know what I mean? Cosmopolitan. Hillbrow never shuts. It's open 24/7. It's very different now. It's a slum now, but back then it was like Manhattan. It was like living in Manhattan basically.
Sure.
And Yeovil was a cheaper suburb, cheaper to live, old Jewish suburb right next door, and there everybody who was a musician or an artist or a poet or anybody who was something else that didn't fit into this stupid shit ended up there. It was cheap to live there.
Yeah.
Journalists, writers, we also ended up there. And there I met a whole lot of other people, a lot of South African musicians. And that became eventually the Voelvry thing. We all met living in Yeovil. Yeovil was a hell of a buzzing scene. There was a lot of cross-cultural things, artists and dancers and photographers and actors and writers and activists, a lot of activists, all mixed up in there and doing shit. It was a hell of a buzzy time and a very inspiring time amid a civil war. This was going on.
Wow.
It was because of that, because of the total danger in the air the whole time. People were getting arrested around us, detained, died. There's a war going on. So we must make no mistake, this was a cuck place. And I think people just needed to do something something that's going to be positive. So that happened. And also about music. If you think it's difficult for music, imagine a time where if you don't agree with everything the government says, the radio is not going to play you, the record companies don't want to touch you, nobody's going to write about you.
Sure.
You're fucked.
We have a lot more freedom today. Like you can
we have total freedom.
You actually have the opportunity to say what you want to say. Like if you had to have this interview, say 30 years ago, we would be on the radio, and we would not be on state. We would not be on state radio. I remember many TV interviews and things that to this day were never broadcast. Yeah, because you'd have 30 minutes, you'd have 15 minutes, and you would be censored and shit like that. So
have you guys seen the Voelvry movie? Because there's some historical perspective.
I have not. I watched a clip out of it, but I haven't watched the whole thing.
I mean, that thing about scratching the records physically so it can't be played.
I remember that stuff.
Yeah, all that happened. So anyway,
that's it.
So this was the situation in the 1980s. Me and my friends were certainly not going to take part in this mainstream shit that's going on. We don't want no part of it. And yet we want to make music. So it was kind of logical for a record label to come out of this that would actually record these people. And that was a guy called Lloyd Ross, who will forever be remembered as the guy who saved South African music.
Damn.
He started a fledgling little label out of a caravan called Shifty Records. The studio was in a caravan. So you could park this caravan next to a house and put the microphones in the house.
That's awesome.
That's how he operated.
Really cool, yeah. So was that like the control room sort of? And then
he went all over Southern Africa recording people. And he signed all these people that nobody else wanted to touch. And he's still one of my dearest friends. We've worked together ever since.
Sure.
So this is people like James Phillips. He's kind of started the label to record James Phillips, who I think is a total genius of South African music. One of the greatest talents we'll ever know in this country. This is Oakie from the East Rand. This is Weirdo from the East Rand. But Lloyd saw his talent and signed him.
I'm not familiar with him. I'll have to.
He became. You might know him as Bernaldus Niemand from Voelvry.
Okay,
well, go and check him out.
I'll make another note.
Check out the Bernaldus Niemand album. That started the whole alternative Afrikaans thing. He was an English act, but he recorded this one Afrikaans album that started that movement. It's called Bernaldus Niemand, where he went into this other character. And on the Voelvry tour, which was 5 years after that album, he wore the hat and everything, and he was that character. But he's actually James Phillips.
Okay.
An absolutely brilliant position. And I was very fortunate to work with him. I mean, I found myself a talent like a really, really honored to be in a room with her. And we ended up playing together a lot. So that was an amazing thing in my life, that I got to know James. And other people like Jannie Hannepoort van Tonder, the best trombone player I've ever come across.
Oh, wow.
You guys don't know who I'm talking about now. I think you should go and check up your Voelvry history and just get some of these names together.
We're gonna, and then we can have.
People have been writing.
We can do some homework.
Books. Yeah.
and then we can chat.
There's so much publicity. There's so much publicity and documentaries. People have been doing this for 30 years. I'm still writing about it because it changed everything. So these people all became part of that movement, kind of jovial and shifty, and culminated in a way in the Volfrey thing. You know, a lot of the people who were involved musically weren't Afrikaans speaking. They were there musically because we shared a musical thing. So it was a very interesting time, and all that happened throughout the 80s. Meanwhile, I worked. I also studied journalism. I worked as a journalist on and off. But at some point, I took a job as a sound engineer, touring engineer, live engineer, with a band that needed an engineer to go and tour with them. I was doing some copywriting job. I hated it, resigned. Okay, I'll be a sound engineer, but I'd never actually done this. I'd never actually sat behind a console. You know, I'd done like, you know, plug in a microphone at a pub gig into a guitar amp, you know.
But you can do this now.
Well, I bullshitted my way. I said, yeah, of course. I know how to do this, and I didn't. And then luckily we had like a week's rehearsal where I could figure this thing out.
Nice.
Okay. And then I did this for about 5 years. I toured with bands.
Okay.
And I quickly learned a hell of a lot, mainly from making mistakes.
Well, that's live sound for you, eh? Yes.
Well, you know, but there are people who don't learn from their mistakes, which isn't good. But if you you have to recognize your mistakes and decide, okay, I'm not going to do that one again. You know, then you get better. But I also watched other people, and there was no information. There's no internet. There's no Google. There was no books on this shit in libraries. Fuck all. So when I worked with other engineers, I'd watch what they do and ask questions, and you know what I mean, and make mistakes. And I got better and better. Eventually, I was like one of the top acts in the country. I was doing very well at that. And then at some point, I got really sick of touring and that. I stopped doing that, and I was just based in Joburg, but still doing it while doing other things. And then at some point, I started working in musical theater, musical productions in theaters. In other words, not rock and roll in bars and whatever venue. Where you have a venue that's designed for this purpose. The venue sounds good. The equipment is good. Everything is, you know, it's like office hours. It's civilized. You can live like this, and you know, and it pays much better. And so after that, I didn't do bands anymore. I did musical theater, all kinds of productions. A lot at the State Theatre in Pretoria and at the Civic in Joburg, and theaters all around the country. But big musical productions. My favorite is the San Duplessis Opera House in Bloemfontein. It's the most astonishing acoustics. It's the best acoustics I've ever heard. It's just mind-boggling. I've been in all, you know, like venues overseas. Sorry, this thing. Anyway, so I was fortunate to work on really good equipment in all these amazing venues. So that gave me a whole other perspective on what you can actually do with sound, which you can't do with rock and roll. It's often so primitive and rushed, and you know what I mean?
Right.
Especially back then, we had very limited equipment. You don't have the rigs that you have today. Things were much more primitive. You didn't have digital equipment and so on.
Right.
Anyway, but throughout this, I've always wanted to work in studios as well. I started doing sessions at some point in the 80s, like a lot of sessions on various things, got more and more experience working in studios like that. And then in 1990, I got an 8-track recorder and some basic stuff, and I set up a little studio in the basement of my house, which I was living in a place in Sharp Street, Johannesburg, in Yeovil. In Sharp Street. So I named the studio Sharp Street Studio, and this is the name I still use to this day.
I've actually heard that.
So to this day, where I'm sitting now is Sharp Street Studio. I just kept the name wherever I've moved many times since then, but
it's before,
Yeah, and it was in a tiny little basement room, and then eventually I got a 16-track and built a studio up later, better place, and then eventually got a whole digital setup, and then we moved again. I built another side. So now I'm in this where I am now, and I've got a very nice space here, and I got all my guitars here, and all my equipment is here. So I'm set up to record a band. There's an old John Bonham drum kit here. There's Moser and Fender and Vox amps and about 30 guitars. And
I'm a Moser fan of Vox amps.
Yeah, they're very nice.
Yeah, there's a 64 here. It's beautiful. And all kinds of other stuff. So I've got a lot of analog gear because I always recorded on analog. So I still got some analog outboard preamps,
beautiful.
tube gear and so on, and a lot of microphones. And so I record here and I mix a lot. this is now all on a computer. I still use it to track tape recorders sometimes.
So do you mix
I still have
the
the
box, or do you have a
Yeah,
console that you?
I mix in the box.
Okay.
I don't have the type of interface that I can interface through my console when I mix.
Yeah.
So I mix in the box, but I record through my console. If I record a band, I use.
Right. Yeah.
I've got a 24 channel console here, so I can plug in 24 mics.
Yeah.
But I mix in the box. But I sometimes take my mixes out onto analog tape.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I've been experimenting with that too. Actually, I have a little Behringer Xenix desk, very cheap. Like it's pretty much the new name for the Behringer Euro discs that they used to make.
I used the Behringer Euro for years. It was fun. Yeah.
And all I do is I just play some of my mixes through that, and just by pushing it a little bit, it adds a little bit of just.
So that's an analog disc, huh?
Yeah. It's not much, but it adds something, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know the science of it. I mean, I lectured sound. I ended up lectured sound engineering.
Okay.
I was offered this job. Okay,
where did you get the offer?
This was a college in Johannesburg, and a friend of mine, Becky Koza, amazing jazz guitarist, he was the head of the music department, and then they started an audio engineering course as well as part of the of the music department. And so I lecture the guys on doing live sound. So that was my job. But I ended up doing studio stuff as well, along with another guy who was like a house producer. So he did the EDM and house and hip hop production, and I did the microphones and analog gear and all that stuff. Anyway, so that was like, but then the students would ask me questions, and I suddenly realized I know all this stuff because I've been doing it for a long time, but I've never really had to verbalize and explain it.
Right. Yeah, it's a different thing. Eh?
Okay. So it's a different thing. So I better get if I'm going to do this, and this was a government college, so I better get my ducks in a row and use the correct terms, because what if they come back and say, but this book says. So I basically went and just read up. I used the correct terms, and the process, a lot of my gaps in my knowledge was filled in. So I did my own studying and research just so that I prepared for the students. And then I started getting really interested in the science of it, which I wasn't before. I was just, getting a nice sound. Where do you put the kick drum mic, And now, so how does it work? How does analog and digital different, and why do these preamps sound different to those? And what's the components that make them different? And how does it all work?
Right.
All the way back to how does electromagnet work, where it all starts and on from there. Yeah. So about the analog stuff, did you understand about the THD, the total harmonic distortion that's built into these things? You understand the science of that.
Yes.
So whatever you're going to run through, there's got an analog transformer or some similar component. Not all of them do it. A VCA does it.
Yeah.
A transformer does it. Tubes do it. Tape do it. And that's about it, eh? Filters don't really do it unless if you push them.
Yeah.
The rest, not really. They're not going to distort in the way that transformers will.
Yeah.
But as you know, you reach a point where the THD starts increasing, and then it gets to a point where it starts saturating.
Yes.
And then it's going to sound different. It's going to now add a lot of harmonics, a lot of harmonic distortion is going to get added now. It's going to get, depending on the thing, it could get thicker, it could get crunchier, it could get brighter.
Yeah,
it could get boomier, and it might not be nice, eh? So
that's the thing.
That's the thing. So I've got various things, and I know them now, which I must push for which effect, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that otherwise you can, it's not as simple as just pushing it and it sounds better. Some things, it's actually sounded better just digital. So I've got these
engineer
options,
talk.
but sometimes I run a mix out onto quarter-inch tape.
Okay.
15 amps and back into I've got a 2-channel all tube preamp in through there just to go back into 24-bit, and that combination is beautiful. This thing adds beautiful valve harmonics. The tape, this is a modern tape recorder, so it's very accurate and precise. So it doesn't really like being pushed too hard. It doesn't tape compress in the way my old Revox used to.
Okay, interesting.
I think the input and output stage are much as fit. So it's much
Yeah,
cleaner.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not VCA. I think that's the difference. So it doesn't really do the tape compression in the way I used to use Revox tape recorders, but it does add a little, I don't know, a little sheen, something.
Sure.
It's hard to say.
Sure.
But the tubes definitely add color. So I record guitars and basses and everything through this tube preamp. It's a DI as well. So everything goes through tubes. So I try to get through tubes, everything in some way before it goes into the computer.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I've got valve microphones, valve preamps, valve guitar amps, something like that. Or something with color.
Yeah.
I've got a Chameleon Lab preamp here. And I've got Neve
very
preamps.
nice.
I've got a couple of Neve preamps as well.
Like actual AMS Neves or?
This is, I don't know if you know the story about the SABC Neves.
I've heard of them having like some really nice.
Well, the SABC during apartheid was like basically so isolated, but they got a bunker mentality.
Yeah.
So when they built what is today known as Auckland Park, the new SABC was then, this was in the early 70s, when they were preparing for television. They built that new huge building and then Auckland Park in Joburg, that huge tower building.
Didn't Mumford and Sons record there like?
Yeah. So now what they did is the TV studio, all the offices, radio studios, and then 3 floors underground of recording studios.
What?
Underground, into
That's
the ground.
so
So it's basically like nuke proof, you know what I mean? It's like a bunker. You go down an elevator, 3 stores, and then you enter the space. And down there, I worked there a lot. Absolute world-class studios. I went to Abbey Road in London and just copied everything. The same dimensions. The 5, you know, there are 5 studios there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They copied them, the dimensions and the design exactly. And then what equipment? And at that time, they were using TG stuff at Abbey Road, but the Neve stuff was coming. And I ordered the new Neve stuff, which was at that point, it was 1073s.
Yeah.
But the next one was coming out already, the 1081. So I think it was a mixture of the two, but mostly 1073. So all these consoles. And you know, it was just phenomenal stuff. Never mind all the Neumann mics and everything. So great stuff. And then these studios, by the 80s, a couple of the people who worked at Radio 5, there were some young producers who were basically sneaking other people in there.
Yeah.
They had the keys. So I ended up working there with all kinds of alternative projects and stuff, but Indy's an unbelievable studio. So that was great. That was a good experience for me. And then later I played a lot of sessions there. And at one point I was producing a live on air show for Radio 5.
Yo, that's cool. Yes.
Basically at that point, there's a guy called Neil Johnson. He's a wonderful radio DJ. He's still around. He's still active. He was like a real rebel, and he was a wonderful guy, a real genuine music lover, not in it for anything else. You know, a lot of radio DJs are in it for the ego.
Yes.
Neil's a real mensch. But anyway, he started this live on 5 basically because the SABC didn't want to touch local music. I mean, to a large degree, it was not good. It's, you know, it's better if it's imported. You know, there was the colonial inferiority complex that we suffered from. Anyway, Neil said, well, these studios are standing empty much of the time. Why don't we do something like this, like a live thing? And he got permission. And then a lot of the bands that I was in an orbit of were suspicious of having anything to do with SABC. So he said, why don't you know these guys? Because a lot of them had recorded in my studio, in my little 8-track studio, because all they could afford, you know.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk to these guys about this? And then I'll make you a producer, and then you produce those shows so that you're there and make them feel it's okay. So this happened. This came about. So all of the people that I'd recorded with friends of mine ended up doing these shows, and other bands that I played in and projects I was involved in, whatever. And Neil accommodated this. It was a wonderful time. So a lot of very talented people who would never have gone near a radio.
Is that similar to what John Peel did?
No, John Peel didn't do that. There was another guy who did. That's what we're talking about now. No, John Peel did sessions. He did sessions later. At first he just played. Later he had that's right. By the 80s he had the sessions.
If I think my favorite Ruts album is a John Peel live session.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
No, you did. He did have a show later where people would play live on air. But these were, I think, half an hour, 45 minutes you get, and you play your set. There was no interruption, no ads.
So awesome, man.
Sure.
Yeah, I've still got some of the recordings. They were great.
Oh, that's crazy.
I've got a bunch I played on.
That's insane.
as
I
well.
I think you should release some of this stuff today.
Some of it has been released in various formats and so on.
Yeah.
Anyway, then at some point, these studios were they began to run them as a private business or a separate business from the SABC. And they changed the name to Radio Park Studios.
Okay.
So now anybody could use them. And I mean, these were world-class studios. So people started coming from all over the world to use these studios. It was quite an interesting time. It's kind of secret because you're down in a bunker. Nobody knows you're there. I once spent a mixing session there for, it was close to about 30 hours. We were down there. Mixing this track. And I don't know what time of day it was when I went in, but when it came out, I didn't know what it was. It was like the 2 days later and at night. I went in daylight. Anyway, because down there, there's no, you're not aware of anything.
Yeah.
It's like this it's like a dim light and air conditioning.
Crazy. Sure.
And there's absolute silence.
Well, at least it's
like
air conditioning.
It's a building within a building. Because they have tremors there from mining activity.
Yeah.
So even if it's an earthquake, you're not going to hear it on the microphone.
What? Holy
That's
shit!
absurd.
That's insane, man. Come on.
The whole building floats on rubber. It's inside another building and floats on rubber.
That's insane.
That's the cost they went to. So anyway, so anyway, that's the story. Well, how did we end up at Radio 5? And
I don't know.
the bunker.
About analog gear, and then
I know what I would like to talk about
their
next.
Neve stuff. And
Yes.
But
yes.
julle twee gaan nou met chat en ek gou draai loop.
okay, so
Okay, so and then but this has been fantastic.
yeah,
I love the engineer talk. It felt like I was in the studio because Dolf also, when we were in the studio, he spent hours with Joe just talking tech, and I'm like, I don't know anything. So excuse me, quick guys, I'll be back.
all right.
Yeah,
So
I'll be back in a sec.
okay, cool. No worries.
Ja, ek's baie bly Dolf het nou die idee gekry van die mics opset. En ek en 'n buddy het hierdie dis cheap condenser mics man, dis Samsons. Maar ons het dit
Ja, dat
gekry.
werk.
Ja, hulle loop nogal.
Ja, dat werk 100%. Dus het maak 'n verskil as jy 'n bietjie op 'n mic is, nie jy weet 'n room sound, jy weet wat room sound is?
Ja.
As jy mic die hele echo van die vertrek
Yes,
op, dan klink
yes.
alles bietjie weird. So as jy ten minste 'n mic het reg voor jou mond wat jy directional
Ja.
dan klink dit dadelik beter. Maar ek sien baie mense, hulle sit goed op YouTube, hulle het 'n selfoon wat daar op die tafel lê en dit is die mic.
Just
En dan hoor jy meer van die hele vertrek wat echo is wat jy eintlik wil hoor.
oh, ja.
Easy
Jy-
mics.
Ja, het klink terrible. Julle klink nou baie lekker.
ja.
Dolf,
Yes.
I just remembered about the Neves, what I wanted to tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Those SABC Neve consoles.
Yes.
In the 80s, they decided to upgrade to SSLs like the rest of the world. So they
Right.
threw out the Neves. And they had no idea that these things become so collectible.
Yeah. Right.
And that they were modular. You can sell off individual strips or individual
Channel strips. Yeah,
preamps,
that's
it's-
right. Yeah.
They're all individual. And they just chucked them in the corner and, help yourself, and people walked away with stuff. And this was not just in Joburg, but in the Cape Town and Durban, they also had studios. And some people who knew, so this friend of mine who worked in American studios, he's heard about this and he bought up a whole lot. And he had a little business selling these things all over the world.
Yes.
So I know Keith Richard has got some, Steve Jordan has got, what's his name, Jack White. They've all got these Neve things that came from the SABC.
No way.
How you can tell? They have Afrikaans writing on them.
No way. Come on, man.
I kid you not. Dit was mos tweetalig daai tyd. So I'm looking at mine here that says Weergalming.
Weergalming. Yo. Love it.
Beperking. That's unlimited.
No way.
On. Mik. And lane.
Lane. Okay. Oh man.
This is amazing. This is amazing. This is special om daai shit te hê.
Beperking.
Ja. En terugvoer. That's
Oh my goodness.
so.
Anyway,
Anyway, so these things were sold off, but among other things, they used what they call a briefcase. This was a thing used for remote sports commentary, like a rugby game. The O goes off to wherever to commentate on the rugby game.
Yeah.
They came with it. They used this. It looks like a briefcase, and inside were 4 special Neve channel strips and a little output section, a little master section, and a telephone. and then they can connect to a telephone line and plug in this 4 mics. So they plug in like 2 commentators and 2 for the audio, the spectator sound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Make a little mix and send it via telephone line to the studio in Joburg where they broadcast it. That's how they used to do
insane.
rugby commentary.
Sure.
That's so cool, though.
So this thing that I've got is 2 of those modules that I
Okay.
got. So it's a stereo pair, and they're configured so that they have their own power supply because they can work by themselves and they don't have the
Right.
little master section.
Yeah.
But this is a broadcast preamp. There's a different model to the 1073, so they weren't meant for music, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So they don't have quite the frequency range of the 1073,
Okay.
but they still have a unique sound, and they're
Yeah.
particularly nice on certain drums. So I do use them, and they've got a built-in limiter that's incredibly crude.
Okay.
It's just wow. It slams, and if you push it vaguely, it just distorts more, but it's not going to go anywhere. It's a brick wall thing, but it actually distorts. And then I tried it I thought, just test it. I'll just shout it in the SM58 and just see where this thing clips, And I immediately recognized that sound. I grew up with rugby commentary on the radio, and when the guy gets excited, there's going to be a try now. It starts distorting. It doesn't get louder. It just started distorting more, and that's why. The guy's getting really excited, but they can't clip the telephone line,
Yeah.
So they put this limiter on. But he's just getting more distorted as he gets louder and more excited. So if you want that sound, this limiter will do it.
But you guys are like production techies, okay? So now me as a
Just to put it into perspective, a 1073 preamp is around a Neve preamp is probably around like 50 grand now. I don't know how much do they go.
I've no idea.
At least 40,000 rand.
There are many generic versions. Many people just use generics because they're not complicated to make at all. You just have to have the right transformers.
Yes, exactly.
It's not a complicated design. You need the right transformers and you'll get that sound. So many generic versions, especially 500 series, those little lunchbox things.
Yes.
Many of them, like hundreds of versions of these things.
Yeah.
But now
So you don't have to get the Neve one, but this is going to be very expensive.
Right.
But for you production techies now, if I listen to Johnny Cash's American recordings, which he did with Rick Rubin, which was, I think, mid-90s or so, and actually after that, 2000s.
Around about there, late 90s, yeah.
If, for instance, as an example, if you take the Nine Inch Nails cover of Hurt that Johnny Cash does, it doesn't matter on what sound system you listen to it. There's stages where his voice distorts.
Yeah.
Was that the console they used? Was that production? Was it intentional?
It could be. Look, if it's on the record, it wasn't not intentional, but signed off on.
Yeah,
they liked it.
It's
you know what I mean? If it was distorted,
I like it.
No, what I mean is, if it was distorted and they didn't like it, it wouldn't be there.
Yeah, but
the fact that it's there means they probably thought, oh, it's cool. It gives extra emotion, extra feel.
But it's unlikely that it was produced that way. It probably happened by accident, and they kept it, right? Like with our song.
Yeah.
It's probably just they decided that's the take we keep.
Yes.
Dolf, have you used 1073s?
Not personally, no. I haven't had the privilege.
I don't have one here, but I've got a Chameleon Labs version, a generic one, 2-channel one. It sounds slightly different, but it works in the same way. So how these things work, it's a couple transformer. That's why it sounds so amazing. It's 2 transformers in and out. So it adds double the THD. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it adds more harmonics. It makes it richer. And that output stage means that's why it's better than the previous one, because you can control the record level with the output.
Yeah.
And you can use the preamp separately from that, which means you can drive the preamp for an effect.
Yeah.
And still control the output level.
Yeah, that's it.
That's what people like about it. Or if you use it the way in, Unity out, then if you set it correctly, it's going to soft clip, saturate a little bit on the biggest peaks.
Yeah.
So they found that's the cool sound. If you go for that, because the way to do it, the input stage clicks. It's not a smooth turning button. It clicks, click, 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 2 dB up in steps. So you turn up, you keep turning up until you can hear distortion. Then you back off 1 and leave it there. That's how they would do it. So that means those peaks, those absolute peaks, are going to saturate and they're going to distort, but it smoothens out the sound instead of making it. You don't hear the distortion because it's only on very short, sharp peaks.
Very audible,
but it actually smoothens the sound because instead of those little peaks jarring your ear, sounding a little abrasive, they smoothed off. They call it soft clipping. And at that point, where you're just there below distortion, you get maximum THD, you get maximum color.
Yeah.
And with those Neves, mine as well. It's a thickening. It adds low audio harmonics, so it kind of thickens in the low mids. But it's not EQ. It's a feel thing. It just feels thicker. It's beautiful. Sure. But you have to get it to that level where for it to really kick in. So I record guitars through my Chameleon, and there's that sweet point where the guitar just sounds bigger. I don't really know why. I use lots of software 1073s as well that I can really fine tune in the mix. So I often use them in the mix on something, especially digital synths and stuff.
The Andrew Shep's 1073 plugin from Waves. Would you say that actually adds a bit of harmonic distortion?
No, that one I use that one, but for EQ. No, if you want, there's one that'll really give you that crunchiness. Is the Lindell one. Lindell. It's on Plug-in Alliance.
Okay, I know them.
Plug-in Alliance. If you go there, they make a thing called a Lindell. Okay. I've got it, but I don't know what it's called now. You'll see it here. It's a 1073 preamp. Actually, the whole little the original 1073 preamp included EQ, just shelves, bass and low, like mine does.
Yeah.
Like this little broadcast one. It's also just got shelves, but they're beautifully musical, eh?
Yeah, very musical.
Just the correct shelf and curve. It's just really beautiful. Yeah. Anyway, includes that. And then the input and output stages. Okay. And filters.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Filters, cool. Which is very cool. And the adjustable filter, the Lindell one is fine adjustable. The Neve one I've got here is in steps of 44, 82, 164. Okay. 3 octaves down. You got 3 octaves there.
Yeah.
So that's the plug-in one that comes the closest to my ears. I use that a lot.
Interesting. I haven't heard
the Lindell
that
one.
Wow.
Yeah, go and plug in the lines. They make a whole. It's a hardware. It's a Swedish company. They make the hardware.
Okay.
But plug in the lines make the. I've got this the software versions.
Yeah, I have a few.
So I use a Lindell channel strip as well. Okay. And then you can get the 1073 preamp by itself. I'm not sure what the model number is. You'll see it there.
Interesting.
It wasn't expensive. It was like cheap.
It just came to me.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Dolf and I have been planning. We need to get to it, but we've been planning to. I made some home recordings with Isak, and now talking to you, I just realized. Dolf and I decided we're gonna because I programmed the drums. So we're gonna record actual drums for it and re-record the stuff that you can't actually release, but definitely keep Isak's bass. So maybe we should get together on that and get Willem to play some lead on it.
Ooh, that could be cool. Yeah,
like because we're gonna release it because the bass we recorded through a Boss Micro BR, very humble home equipment.
Well, don't worry about the sound. There's, don't worry. What I heard, I could hear everything, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So I think we should actually get Willem in on one of the songs.
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I spend a lot of what I do involves mixing stuff that people recorded at home, often not in good situation.
So in other words, fixing other people's fuck ups.
Well, I've got all the tools and experience.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's where I come from. I come from worst case scenario. I mean, the first bands I mixed with this terrible primitive equipment, and I just I had a moment. The first gig I mixed, right?
Yeah.
There was a band before us. I was very nervous, but this other oak mixed, and I checked the whole time. This oak was fiddling with a bass drum EQ, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was getting it nice, but that's all he was paying attention to. Meanwhile, I was listening to the mix. It was cuck. There was a guitar solo I couldn't hear because he didn't turn up the guitar. And then there was some vocals I couldn't hear. And then there was a tom mic that wasn't switched on, but he didn't notice all of that. He was playing with a kick drum EQ. And I could see the audience losing attention and drifting off to the bar because I can't really hear the words.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I just, fuck the bass drum EQ. I just said that's also from Bruce Springsteen, his understanding of the song and what's the focus? What's the song? That's the voice right in the middle. So when I mix the band, I just try and get the voice clear, get the beat clear, and make sure when there's a solo of somebody that you can hear the oak, You know, and then he goes back to rhythm volume when he's not, because so you keep the focus on the foreground and the background, keep that focus.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the audience is right there from the first song. The kick drum EQ isn't great, but Joe and Joanna don't know what kick drum EQ is.
Yeah.
Only other sound engineers are concerned with that.
Yeah.
So once I got the rest right, I'll get the kick drum EQ better.
Yeah,
But that's not my priority. You see, so that's kind of where I come from.
Yeah, a drum sound has to be really, really horrible before I notice that it's bad.
Yeah, that's true.
For me,
Yeah.
for
No,
me,
but-
honestly,
no, but I mean-
not, but
I can think
Yeah.
of one. I can think of one album where I can go like,
Yeah.
I fucking hate the drum sound.
I know which one said that.
Yeah, but
no,
you know-
it's cold.
Yeah, but you must also remember something like I don't know many examples of this, but I'll take something like Beck or somebody. There's, you know, you get your classic studio, fantastic drum sound. We all know it. You know, it's an expensive studio, expensive microphones. I spent a lot of time. The drums are beautifully tuned. It's a great drummer. Awesome. Okay. That's not always real life. It doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah.
So what do you do when it's not that scenario and this is what you're dealing with? Well, then you have to make a plan, you know? So I've learned to make plans all along, and I've got the experience to pull stuff out. And there's so many tools now that I've got. I mean, you can always sample things or whatever the hell,
Yeah.
you know, replace with samples or whatever the hell, what it comes to. But I extract it off for you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that people have an idea of like, this is how you do it. And if it's not like this, it's shit. And then somebody else comes along, ignores all that, puts out a thing with the worst drum sound, according to those people, ever. And the thing is a hit.
Yeah.
The next second, oh, that's how your drums must sound. That's the new drum sound. We must all sound like that. It's actually pathetic, you know what I mean?
It is.
Anything can work in any situation. If something works for the song, it doesn't matter if it's sound, what is good or bad. I mean, who makes these decisions? If it works for the song and people like it, it's right. That's all.
Yeah.
And I'm just very aware of not trying to impress other sound engineers and their conceptions of what is good or right, because it's actually nothing to do with this artist and this song.
really.
Yeah, this vision,
So-
that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, but however, I do like great drum sounds. Of course I do. I'm a sound engineer, and I spend a lot of time getting it as good as I can, especially when I record the drums.
Mm.
But if I'm faced with a cuck one, I'll make a plan. I'll still pull something out of the hat that may not be, you know, I don't mind a sound that nobody's ever heard and there's nothing like everybody's ever used. God knows what the hell it is. It's some percussion noise, but it gives the track the bounce and the groove it needs. It's fine. Let's go with it. So I was working today with a guy. He doesn't play drums. He just programs stuff, but he likes interesting percussion sounds. So he constructs these grooves out of these sounds. And you can't really do it any other way. That's how he does it, and it's beautiful. But I don't mad about all these sounds that he comes to. But I'll treat them, I'll edit them, I'll do something to them and make them work,
Yeah.
because the groove is there. The groove is there. You know what I mean? That's the important thing. The groove is happening. It makes me feel, yeah, I got this. Then I'll work with the sounds and make them better. You know what I mean?
It's crazy what you guys do with sound. Like, if I think you're kind of in the same boat as Paul Rickard, and the last remix he did for us, I asked him to talk a bit about it and explain to us what he did. And he actually used a slamming sort of warehouse door for the one beat, and the other beat was him banging his keyboard. You know, like,
Why not?
It's crazy what these people do.
Of course. It's all over.
It's beyond me. Listen, I play guitar and I sing, you know, like I'm not focused on that stuff. So for me, it's so interesting. And
that started with sampling technology started in the 80s, and that changed everything. If you can sample a sound and use it for something and it works. So, you know, hip hop and EDM, you can do anything with any sound.
Look at
If you
industrial.
can make it work. Yeah, exactly.
It's the heart of industrial sampling.
Yeah, and Paul Rickard, he comes very much from that industrial sound. He really understands how to make that sonic thing work, and it's a skill and an art, and he's really good at it.
I have the world's respect for that guy.
Yeah, and to have the imagination to see, well, I can take this sound and make a sample and then edit it like that, and then use this an element to make that rhythm.
Yeah,
there's a lot of artistic vision involved there, so I have a lot of respect for people who are good at it. I don't do much of that myself. I use samples, but I sometimes create my own drum sample, a particular snare drum sound that I want to use on something.
Yeah.
I'll go and hit the snare drum there till I'm happy and then make that my sample. You know what I mean? I do that sometimes.
Yes.
Every time I use my drill, I think this could be a sample.
But it's cool. It sounds probably like you could sample that and use it.
I've done stuff like scratching a plectrum on a guitar string,
Yeah.
I love that sound.
I just made a whole rhythm out of it. And loop it, why not? It's there, it works. Who cares?
I'm looking at my list here, and I think we're definitely going to have another conversation. That doesn't mean we have to wrap up soon. It just means there's about 20 points on my list, and we've gone through 2. There's one thing that I have to bring up because it hits my heart. Last time you mentioned it, and tonight you mentioned it again, and it's the first time in my life that I heard someone say it other than me, and no one's ever agreed with me. Where you called what happened in the 80s with the apartheid regime a civil war. I've never heard anyone agree with me on that. Can we speak about that for a moment?
Look, the official word was no. There wasn't.
But in my mind, we were all South Africans and we were killing each other. That's civil war.
Okay, there were different realities, and there's a very good reason that the media was controlled the way it was. Okay, so if you watch the SABC News, everything is lovely. Everything is great.
Yeah.
My parents didn't know what was going on. They read the Burger, which was controlled by the Broederbond. The SABC was controlled by the Broederbond. It was everybody got the same message in the church, in the newspaper, on the radio. Where you go, same message. This is all good. Everything's under control. Everything's going to be lekker. Meanwhile, outside of that, the rest of South Africa knew what was really going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were army in the townships. There were police everywhere. People get detained without reason, without explanation, just stuck in jail, and with no time limit.
Yeah.
What kind of country does that to people?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where we were. It was a totalitarian regime in the worst possible way. If you dissent, well, you're an enemy. They use terms like communism and terrorism, which has fuck all to do with anything, just to label people. So if you're a communist supporter, you're red, you're bad. You could get jailed. For saying something very innocent, like maybe you guys shouldn't be so hard on blacks. You're a communist. That was kind of, I don't know if you understand a mindset like that. So there was a lot of people, white South Africans. We're white South Africans, but listen, we're a tiny bit of this population. This is a real country. Yes, so if you talk to white South Africans who were around that time, they might tell you that wasn't their reality. I was mixing in a different crowd, and yes, that was the reality. The other thing was that South Africa, again with this communist bullshit Cold War thing, got involved in a war in Angola that had bugger all to do with South Africa. So there were thousands of young South Africans dying in Angola for something that had nothing to do with South Africa. So that was going on at the same time. This was a civil war in Angola. South Africa decided to back the one side. The next thing, we're fighting conventional tank battles against the Cuban army, who got the other side was supported by the Cubans. And something that's got nothing to do with South Africa.
Yeah.
That was going on at the same time. And it's all in the name of communism and terrorism. And
But dude,
and meanwhile, and the true facts of what was going on in this country was just totally obscured. And the rest of the country, which is like 80%, knew what was going on. We were not fooled in any way what was going on.
I was a small child back then. But I remember in about, I think it was 86 when I was 6 years old in sub 8.
Yeah.
And the school at assembly, that's in Salsa.
Yeah.
And they told us, if you see a box or a bag in the street, avoid it with your bicycle because there might be a bomb in it.
Yeah, well, that was the paranoia that was,
Yeah, so it's hectic.
Does that sound like a war situation? That's not normal.
No, it's not. But I didn't think anything of it because I was not aware of everything going on because I was such a little child, so I was not aware of it.
Yeah.
But I remember the day that my dad I don't know if it was me and my brothers or just me, but he sat me down and he explained to me what racism is. And I was like, what the fuck? I don't understand. You know, I just didn't get it because, but at the same time, I was not leaning to either side because I was exposed to both. And so I was just neutral. I was just living my life. And when my dad sat and explained it to me, and when the teacher said, don't drive over a box in the road, I was like, what are you guys talking about? This is insane, you know? But, and those are crazy times, the segregation and everything. But I feel like I hope South Africa gets to the conclusion of that, because I feel like after so many years, we still haven't. I mean, I'm almost 40, and I feel ons is nog in dieselfde kak.
But if you look at what's happening worldwide right now, the whole world has never...
Exactly. That's a good point, because the thing is, no country is fine. I mean, fuck, look, no country is fine. We don't
misunderstand.
We don't have...
I mean... Sorry, Hanan?
I wanted to say, we don't have the kind of racial violence that, for instance, America has. You know, there is racial violence in this country, but so it just feels like the shit's never going to stop. So what do? How do you get around it?
Well, you must look at it again. I think history as a guide or offers some explanation that, I mean, discrimination goes back to the Bible. I mean, you can blame a lot of the stuff on the Bible because the bad people would not be white, you know, or rather the Bible is also just a book written by a lot of white people hundreds of years after the fact, who then claim to be doing it in the name of God. And then some people, okay, we'll believe that. We'll go by that. And this says these things about certain people. So, you know, you have to ask yourself just for a second, whoa, says who? And then it all tumbles down like a house of cards, a whole lot of shit. Anyway, it comes from that, and there's a whole Western tradition that they're superior, they're white, and that black people in Africa are savages, and there are people to this day who think that. And as you say, Dolf, I mean, sorry, Ozzy, when you were 6 years old, you didn't know what they were talking about. Your dad had to explain to you what racism is. We're not born with this stuff. We're taught this stuff. We grow up in an environment where it's normal, and then it's normal for us. And that's exactly what's happening.
We become conditioned.
Well, you grow up in a certain environment where this is what people do, so you also do it because that's what you seem to be doing. You know what I mean? But we're not born inherently racist. If you know, I've seen many my son and play along with his black friends. There were never a question. They were all just kids playing together. It was never like you white, me black. It's only when somebody points it out to them that there's a difference. And for me, I studied philosophy as well. I don't know, I spoke about that last time, but I have a philosophical outlook on things, and I particularly studied modern existentialism, which is basically about we're all just consciousness. Each of us is just consciousness. That's all there is. We each just consciousness, 7 billion or 8 billion of it. And we all make sense of everything for ourselves. That's all we really know. Everything else we can decide to know, but that's all we actually know. And that's all we are. And if you don't see another human being as the same consciousness as you are, but as something else, then there's not racist, but it can be, that's where you make somebody the other, not like me, because they're a certain, whatever it is, whether it's race, religion, culture, language, however you define them as different to you, that makes them the other against us, you in shit. Their trouble starts because people know when you objectify them. You're making them an object rather than respecting them for a fellow subjective being.
And it takes
subjective.
It takes a long time to form yourself, like each of us. Like it takes a long time to form the person you become, and there's so many influences. Like, I mean, you just mentioned the Bible and whatever. Now I am religious. I actually believe in the scripture.
But I respect. By the way, I respect every human beings. Like I just said. Right to decide for themselves what they believe 100%. I only have respect for that. I have a problem with organized religion.
My problem is that you're accurate in your statement that back then people would use religion and they would claim that there's proof that it's okay for them to be racist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, exactly.
I read that same book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I serve that same God, yet
That's the thing. You can interpret how you want,
So
and people take from it
how
what
on
they want, and
earth-
they always have.
how on earth can you use that to justify racism? So that was my point. It was not. It's just I do believe, but I don't understand how people can use it to justify anything evil. But people will use anything to justify their intention.
That's the thing. You can use anything to prove anything if you want to. If you actually, you can look at things like that, or you can look at what do we know factually?
Yeah, dude,
Then there's actually nothing of that.
If I have to
This
look
is
at
all.
my
You know
own,
what I mean?
yeah, if I have to look at my own life, every bad decision I've made, I could justify at the time. you know what I mean? I think you do.
Of course.
So it's just people corrupt shit. People corrupt things. They make it a tool.
The thing about religion is that you basically, okay, this is what I believe. Well, how do you argue about that against that? You know what I mean? It's what you've decided
I
to
can't.
believe. You know what I mean? So
I have conversations about it. I don't have arguments about it.
Yes. I mean, that's what you've decided to believe. That's all you can say is, well, I respect your decision to believe that. There's nothing else to be said about it.
I see no reason to argue with anyone, and I certainly am not going to save anyone. But
I do have a problem with the belief system that you see. If you buy into a belief system, right, with whatever rules and whatever it comes with, well, you buy into it, and you then subject yourself to it. You know what I mean? Because you buy into it, you believe it. If you don't, then it doesn't apply to you. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if people judge me from their belief system because I'm not in their belief system, they're not seeing me as a subject with respect my right to make my own decisions about what I believe or not, and they subjected me, judging me in terms of their belief system. That I don't take.
But if they're judging you, then they are doing it wrong.
Well,
that same book that tells me what to do and what not to do, amongst other things, it says I'm not allowed to judge. So I don't care what you believe.
Well, in my pa was a dominee. I grew up in a Christian house. I know all about this stuff from a very young age. All of it, overload. Okay, I know all about this stuff. But my parents, well, I hated it. my parents weren't stupid. They were academics. They both became academics. But what I'm saying, they understood that thing, that if you can't judge other people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You don't have that right because you're a Christian to judge other people. What the hell do you know? They understood that, and they absolutely imprinted that in me. I remember my parents had Jewish friends and they had Muslim friends. Yeah. And I was, as a kid, asked them, but I thought, if you don't believe in Jesus, then, and my father just always said, it's not for us to judge. God will decide. Not for us to judge. Respect them. They're good people. Let them believe it's their choice, and God will decide.
I entirely
so that
agree.
was, you know what I mean? So that respect for other people, let them, you know what I mean? That was imprinted on me.
My thing is just like, I believe with complete conviction, but I don't expect anyone else to believe it. You know what I mean? I don't go around telling people they need to be like me. I do pray for them, but I can't expect anyone to believe this. Because if you think about it, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. But for me, I have complete conviction. But I don't need to. I don't need to change anyone.
The thing is this: we all make our own meaning for ourselves. We all find ways to make life meaningless and not totally absurd for each of us. And if believing in something that gives that meaning to you, that's 100% what you should be doing. If that works, you know what I mean? If it works for you, if it brings meaning to your life of some sort, then that's what you should be doing.
Just as long as you
and
don't
that's
judge
all
anyone.
I can say about it. Well, I can't judge that. How can I judge it? If it means something in your life, that's great.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's the same thing. Like, I don't want to go around judging people. I don't want to condemn anyone. It's like we need to make the best of it. We need to make this work.
Well,
we can't change the world, right? This is actually something that Henry Rollins said.
Yeah.
You can't change the world, but you can change your street.
Yeah.
So I can be there. I can be there for the people in my life. I don't need to save their souls. That's not my job, right? That's not my job. But I can be there for the people in my life. and
Yeah.
mean something to them and encourage them. I
tell
can't
you-
change
I'll tell
the
you
fucking
something.
world.
No, you can't. But there's certain things that I knew from the Bible, right? Love your neighbor.
Mm.
Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. Do not judge. Be
Yeah.
kind. Those things, that's fucking brilliant. That's
Makes
good
sense.
stuff. Then later, I kind of became aware of the hippies, and they were saying peace, love. That's kind of the same thing,
Yeah.
Peace is better than war, yeah. And love. So what does that mean? Well, it means you respect other people. You
Yeah.
cause war when you don't respect other people, when you do unto them as you wouldn't do unto yourself.
Yeah.
Well, then you're not really, that's not love. And that's how you're going to create war. But if you're kind to people and love your neighbor, well, that's, you know what I mean? So to me, there's no difference in those values.
Mm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't have to, but you can find those values in probably almost any belief system. And you don't need a belief system. It makes just plain common sense.
Yeah, wees net 'n nice mens.
It's going to lead.
Nee,
It's going to have better outcome than being a push.
Yeah.
So, it's very simple.
Exactly. So I entirely agree. And for me, like I said, I have the conviction, so I have a set faith, which I believe in. But yes, thank heavens that I don't need to judge anyone. I can dig everyone that's cool. If you're gay or whatever, or you're not the same race as me or whatever, not the same religion, but if you're a good person, I get to like you. But if you're
That's
a
the
dick,
thing,
but if you're a dick, I'm not gonna like you. You know?
No, but that's the thing. It's the person. It's not
Yeah, exactly.
whatever else. Whatever else that you see about them,
No
or
one.
how you classify them or categorize them or any of those things. But spend time with this person. Talk to them.
Yeah, and like I said, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. No, I've met people in my life that you think, this person looks like something I'm going to avoid. And then we, for some reason, have a little exchange. And I realize, this is a really interesting person. I like talking to this person. They've got things to say and in an interesting way. And then I end up becoming their friend. And it's the least likely person I thought.
Yeah.
I parked for years on the foreshore in Cape Town, there between the highway bridges. There's like barren land there next to the harbor. I work down there, so I park my car there every day. And there's homeless people who live there. And this is one guy, he's sort of, like the freelance car guard. And I just noticed this guy's reading the newspaper every time I come there. Oh, what are you reading? No, I'm reading the politics, man. I can't believe what the Republicans are trying to push through the House. I realized, fuck, this guy, he picks up discarded newspapers. He knows everything that's going on. He's totally... really intelligent guy with opinions and not general stuff. He knows what he's talking about, and he follows politics, he follows sport, and he knows what's happening, and he knows what what I mean. And he's a guy living under a plastic sheet on a highway bridge.
We have to appreciate individuals for who
absolutely
they are.
That's a cool guy. I'd be his friend anytime. He's a cool guy.
That's amazing.
And that's his circumstances in his life. But that doesn't make him somebody that I don't want to know, I think is bad or, some homeless, I don't know, no, it's not like that. It's not like, once you know the person, it could be entirely different.
Yeah.
I find the same with like musical genres. Somebody plays something and then, hey, but I really like this track.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't have listened to this album because you told me it's a cuck genre, but that track is fucking awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a soft spot for some songs, which is like, dude, I spent the last 2 weeks listening to Belinda Carlisle and Wilson Phillips, and I fucking enjoyed it,
Fantastic harmony singers, the lineage of those people, their parents are.
Yeah, the Beach Boys and the Mamas and Papas, no?
Yeah, I mean, those people like, one of the big elements of 60s pop was West Coast harmonies. Started with the Beach Boys. It was a barbershop, American tradition in the 50s. Barbershop singing, 4-piece a cappella quartet.
Yes, see.
Beautiful, very, very, very intricate, complicated harmony singing.
When you mentioned
like a thing.
When you mentioned the Beach Boys the first time, I wanted to tell you that that was as a young child. I'm talking about 8-9 years old. The first band in my life that I called my favorite band was the Beach Boys.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, in the 80s.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. But so it's like.
No, but that style of singing, the Beach Boys really brought that barbershop thing into a pop context and made it hugely popular. And then it was California, and it became a California thing, harmony singing. And the mamas and papas were awesome. And then Crosby, Stills and Nash, the Byrds before that, Crosby, Stills and Nash, just sublime harmony singing.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for me, and the Wilson Phillips is like this next generation of those people,
Yeah, it's great. That was crazy stuff. Yeah.
Long tradition of really sophisticated. The Eagles, their harmonies are sublime. So I love that stuff. I absolutely love harmony singing. Yeah, I love the Beatles harmonies as well.
I think the point is just like if it hits you, it hits you. It doesn't matter what it is.
But there's something particularly, I've recorded lots and lots of voices, sibling voices. There's something about siblings singing harmony that makes it sound that, it's a known thing. Other people don't make it. I mean, there's family singing groups have always been a hit.
There's something that voices sing with me.
Well, you must try it. I mean, the Wilson brothers, the Beach Boys were the Wilson brothers.
I'll try it. Okay. Shit. I can't.
And the Everly brothers and who were the others? All brothers.
Well, there's also the guys who did Unchained Melody.
The Bee Gees, the Bee Gees.
No, but Unchained Melody, what was that? The Righteous Brothers, but were they actually brothers?
They weren't brothers.
Oh, okay.
They weren't brothers. No, they were just. But the other lot I mentioned now, the Bee Gees. Have you heard of the Bee Gees? Go check them out. Okay.
I really hate them as much as I hate ABBA. Sorry,
yes,
so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry.
Their harmony singing is mind-boggling, and their disco era, Saturday Night Fever, that album is one of the best produced records you will ever hear. With some of the funkiest and the most ridiculous falsetto voice you will ever hear in your life.
I won't diss their talent, but I can't listen to it.
And in the 60s, some of the most just beautiful pop songs ever written. Just go and listen to this stuff. It's just for the skill and the art of writing stuff that beautiful. Those Elton John stuff in the early 70s, the melody writing.
Now, Elton John's got fat jams. I can't fuck with him. He's got fat jams.
Just go and listen to that just for the melody. And then the Beatles, I mean, it's like a textbook of how to write melody. And Pet Sounds, Beach Boys, particularly Pet Sounds. That's where it all comes. That's where Brian got it all together with the songwriting. Those are like landmarks. It's like you can go and study. How do you write melody? Go and listen to those things. That's how you do it.
I'll go listen to those, except the ABBA and the Bee Gees.
Sure, you've got a long list there, though, eh?
Yes. Yeah, we're not going to finish my list tonight. I think we should probably start to wrap it up. Willem, vertel ons gou 'n bietjie van so you've got the studio.
Yes.
What's the name of the studio again?
Sharp Street Studio. Yeah, I ran that throughout the 90s. I'm still running it, but in between I also do journalism jobs.
Okay.
On and off, which I've always done, and I've always also played in many bands, usually as a sideman. So I'm seldom a permanent member of a band, But when a band's active and they're recording and playing, I might be a member.
We're definitely gonna have to chat again because, like I said, I have this list, so we're gonna get into all of that. But you got your studio. If someone wants to get in touch with you, you can send me your details, and I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, there's I'm on Facebook as well. You can message me there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we'll put people in touch with you. It's been a most privilege, man. It's like we have not touched half of the subjects I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Possibly largely because the most important one, Isak, took up most of it. En ek kan nie nog baie praat oor hom. Maar en verder saam wie jam jy nou? Which bands are you still playing, or are you just producing?
At the moment, there's a couple of bands where when they're active, we play. But as you know, nothing is active. So I'm a member of Big Sky with my friend Steve Lowe.
Big Sky.
And we might do some, he's recorded a new album, so we might do some gigs when that happens again, when that's possible again.
Yeah, cool.
For the rest, not one particular band that, I've got many friends that I play with, but nobody's playing at the moment. So often stuff I produce or record, I also play on, and then when I go and play live, I'll come and play as well, the parts that I played and so on and so on.
Awesome.
But I'm producing at the moment. I'm mixing an album for Dax Butler. The third album we're doing together is beautiful music. Andrew Niemand, Afrikaans artist, singer-songwriter. Bacchus Nel.
I ken vir Bacchus, ja.
Andries Bezuidenhout. These are all Afrikaans singer-songwriters I've just been mixing albums for. Really nice stuff. Rico Latti, been working with him a lot.
Ek ken vir
mixing
Rico,
stuff.
Ek ken vir Rico,
Ja. Ja, so
hoor
ek
jy
en hy
nog- Sorry,
Ja?
sorry. Gaan eens aan.
You guys wouldn't know Calm Henry 8. Was a 90s band.
Ja,
that
fuck,
song.
ek ken Henry uit.
Yeah, I produced that first album, and I've
Serious?
been working with
Oh,
Palmer ever since. I'm working with her at the
wow.
moment. She's in
I
America
see.
at the moment.
Dis befoko.
Yeah, she's in America at the moment, but we're still working together. She sends me stuff to mix.
Yo, that's
like guitar
amazing.
and so. Yeah,
Okay,
she's
kom
great.
ons doen gou 'n outro en dan chat ons nog vir 'n paar minute, maar off
Ja.
the record. Okay, so,
Alright.
So Willem, Dolf,
Yes.
thank you guys for joining.
Yeah.
This was amazing. We're definitely going to have to do another one because, as I've said 5 times, the list. There's a lot of things to talk about. But this was amazing. Thank you very much, Dolf,
Yeah.
Willem. You both are in Cape Town. As soon as they allow us, we can go have a surf and a braai.
Yeah, like a
Absolutely. That would be fun. And I'd like to, if you guys got something that you want me to, I don't know, collaborate on in some way, let me know. I'd
Totally,
love to.
yeah.
The thing
sounds
with
like fun, yeah.
the thing with Isak songs, I would love. Can I tell you something really fucking weird? There's this
Yeah.
guy, this ginger guy. He's moose long ginger hair, great musician.
This is Rouse.
Yeah. So I saw him play a couple of times or whatever.
What instrument does he play?
Guitar. He's like a acoustic guitar and sings, right?
Okay.
And one night I got a Facebook message from him, and he's like, "Dude, I saw the same song that I posted about Isak that you saw." He's like, "I saw
Yeah.
this." He's like, "I saw the song. That was my uncle."
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
He contacted me. He's, what's his name?
Nicholas.
Nicholas. He contacted me. He
Rouse.
wants to go.
I was
He
in a
plans
band
to
with
come and
that guy.
record.
So I was like, fuck me dead. You also have to play on it. So I think we're going to make a pretty big production
Big-ass
of this.
collab,
I think we're going to
yes.
make a pretty big production of this thing, and we're going to honor Isak
Like it.
in it.
Awesome.
Well, I must tell you, since a few days ago, or last week, that guy contacted me, Nicholas. What's his surname?
Rouse. Nicholas Rouse.
Yes, he contacted me. He wants to come and record here.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, we spoke about it. He's just waiting till the time is good and so on, but he's planning. He's got a whole lot of songs and he wants to come and record here. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
He's really good
that's
artist.
awesome.
Really good
Yeah,
artist.
he's
eh?
really,
Fuck, he's
really good,
good.
eh?
He's good.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Now, he sent me something to listen to, MP3, and I thought a really nice song. Yeah, and I'd like
Ja,
to.
but folk.
We'll see.
So yeah, so like he's going to be in on it. Willem's going to be in on it. Bro,
This is so
we
cool.
can make a big production of this.
Luister, ons moet klaarmaak. Ek moet dit
Ja.
al goed gaan doen.
Ja, baie dankie.
Baie
man.
lekker.
Laat
Laat
dit
dit gaan.
jy.
hè.
Thanks, Willem. But
Ja.
yeah, that was lekker geweest.
Lekker ouens.
Give cheers,
Lekker.
bro.
All right. Lekker on, bro.
Cheers.
Bye,
Cheers,
fam.
selfde.
Bye-bye.